Hello, welcome to the August 2011 video edition of the Iowa General Fund Monthly Revenue Memo. I am Jeff Robinson, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, the nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa Legislature. This video will cover the first 2 months of cash fiscal year 2012, and I will provide some historical perspective for general fund receipts. I will also discuss how the books are closing on the recently completed fiscal year 2011. August 2011 was a mildly positive month, but for the first 2 months of the cash fiscal year, receipts are down $39.4 million compared to the previous year. On a percent basis, the year-to-date decrease is 4.1%. However, law changes and timing issues are skewing the numbers, and while after adjustment the rate growth is positive, the growth rate so far is not very impressive. This table provides the revenue change numbers for the month of August and also the fiscal year to date. August net revenue increased $6.6 million, with decreased gross tax receipts and increased school infrastructure refunds more than offset by increases in other receipts and decreased regular tax refunds. Turning to the year-to-date second column, we see that all 4 categories are contributing to the downturn in net revenue. As mentioned earlier, however, revenue adjustments are necessary before comparing fiscal year 2012 to fiscal year 2011. This table provides the known adjustments. First, a recent change to the Iowa Code directs $106 million of cigarette tax receipts to a fund outside of the general fund. This impacted July and August general fund receipts by $37 million. Second, an increase in the school infrastructure refund amount decreased net revenue $8.1 million, and the increase is likely due to an adjustment to the pace of transfers in order to make up for previous under-transferred amounts. Next, a $3 million decline in miscellaneous income can be traced to the timing of periodic transfers from the unclaimed property fund. The bottom line of this table reflects an adjusted growth rate for the first 2 months of $8.7 million, an increase of about 0.8%. Let's now have a look at the net receipts by month over the most recent 13 months. For the following charts, the underlying numbers have not been adjusted for any calendar or processing issues. Revenue increase months are colored blue, decrease months are red. Net general fund revenue has now increased 9 of the past 12 months, but those 3 down months have all been during the most recent 6 months. Personal income tax revenue is the most significant source of general fund revenue, and July and August returned to positive growth territory, and the past 12 months have only had 1 negative month. Sales and use tax revenue has shown a similar pattern to personal income tax, with 11 growth months in the past year. However, the rate of growth has slowed over recent months. Cigarette and tobacco taxes are part of other taxes and therefore included in this graph. The month of August is the second in a string of months that will show significant declines in other taxes as the first $106 million of cigarette tax revenue gets deposited to a fund outside of the state general fund. Let's now take a more long-term look at general fund revenue. The next 4 charts present 12-month moving totals for net revenue, meaning gross receipts minus tax refunds. All charts will start with the 12 months ending June 1994. Iowa personal income tax revenue began a period of no growth starting in the late 1990s when tax rates were lowered 10% and a U.S. recession followed in the early 2000s. The level of personal income tax revenue remained relatively unchanged for 5 years, with increases beginning in earnest around June of 2004. Revenue growth from that point continued until late 2008 when the effects of the U.S. recession caught up with Iowa. The revenue drop from there was significant, but revenue growth returned by the late summer of 2010. Growth has slowed somewhat over the past several months. Sales and use tax shows a pattern very similar to personal income tax, and sales and use tax growth has also slowed recently. The third most significant tax revenue source is corporate income tax, and corporate income tax is very volatile. The level of revenue the state currently receives from the corporate income tax is essentially the same as much of the 1990s. Looking at overall net general fund revenue, and this chart does not include transfer revenue, we see that recent revenue growth has been choppy and the level of revenue remains well below the peak level experienced in late calendar year 2008. I would now like to turn to the recently completed fiscal year 2011. Although that year ended June 30, revenue and refunds that are properly charged to that fiscal year continue to be processed through the end of September. Some categories are already finished, however, and this table provides a breakdown of fiscal year 2011 as it stands now. The first data column provides the March revenue estimate provided by the Revenue Estimating Conference for fiscal year 2011, and the second column provides the known actual numbers so far. Note that the accrual line in bold will not be known until the end of September. With that one number remaining, and a possible additional adjustment to the school infrastructure amount, fiscal year 2011 is currently $51.4 million above projections. I will provide a final assessment of fiscal year 2011 in next month's video. In summary, the month of August was mildly positive and would have been more positive without a law change impacting cigarette tax deposits. And while the year-to-date numbers currently read negative, the numbers turn mildly positive after known adjustments are factored in. But while adjusted general fund revenue growth over recent months remains positive, the pace of growth appears to be slowing. As the books are closing on fiscal year 2011, the numbers currently indicate that revenue will exceed projections. I thank you for your interest in Iowa General Fund revenue. Goodbye, and please check out the next monthly video memo in early October.